Settlement doesn't seem right to me.
Well, it's let's call it a resolution.
Okay.
I think both parties agreed that they were better off um, settling
Okay.
and resolving the issues so that they didn't have to take the next step, which was, well, continue to pay significant fees to various legal counsel, consultants, mediators, things like that,
Okay.
and B, get in a courtroom where everybody's under oath and your deepest, darkest secrets are revealed, and then on top of that, you never know what the outcome's going to be. So that was certainly the purpose of the mediation, and it's a typical for this court in Florida and this judge specifically to order mediation. And so the mediation took place, and it was a typical mediation type environment. And the parties just continued to talk without the mediator, and were ultimately to come to a resolution. My role was basically kind of tell them where I thought each side had holes in their claims, and try to get them to think rationally about the television world, the realignment world, and what their various options were. And I think they took that to heart, and it hopefully set them on the path to where they ultimately came to a resolution. The other part that was obviously important was in what took a while, because this happened back in the summer, was
Most
waiting.
of the work you're saying of this was done last summer.
Well, my part,
Okay.
and certainly the mediation. I don't really know exactly what happened once I was out of Tallahassee, but there was a need for the ESPN option to either occur or not occur, and it's not surprising to me that the resolution was reached pretty quickly after ESPN triggered the option to extend the contract through 2036.
Okay, so you're answering some key questions there. Let's back it up. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't mediation ordered somewhere around January or February last year?
I don't know exactly. It might not have been that early. I think I got my
It was
first
sometime
call.
last year.
Yeah, I got my first call sometime in April asking if I was interested.
Okay, all right. And I guess maybe take a bigger step back. Everybody, this is Bob Thompson, retired president of Fox Sports, a guy who helped create the Big Ten Network. He does his own consulting now. As you can tell, he's out there wanting to play golf and get sunshine and do other stuff with his family. And so he now does this on a consulting basis. And so I'm just finding this information out now. Evidently, it came out in an athletic article maybe yesterday or day before. But you've been a silent mediator for months, right? Even when you engaged with us, that was something you just said, we're not going to talk about the ACC. Now you're revealing yourself that you were involved in that, not to say you were the only one, but you were part of that mediation as it got started. Is that right?
Yes, I was the kind of the quote mediator. I was the guy in the middle, and
Okay.
then the attorneys and folks from the ACC and folks from FSU would be the two participants. Very standard, like I said, mediation, and we went from there. As far as being silent, I still have to remain somewhat silent. I can certainly talk about the things that they have talked about, but as the mediator, I'm under certain confidentiality provisions that I can't talk about, or I saw documents I can't talk about. There's a lot of things I can't talk about, but if you
Right.
ask those, I'll just tell you. And you've asked them before, and I just said I can't talk about that.
Right. That's fair. That's totally fair. So, okay. Like we can jump ahead in time a little bit. We're assuming you're doing all this work in the background as a mediator. You have two engaged sides, both the ACC and Clemson, Florida State, were actively looking to get resolution, but each one of them wanted their own type of resolution. And isn't it true in mediation, there's no really winners, no super losers. Everybody is a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think it's the situation for the mediator is not necessarily get what the mediator thinks is a good deal, but it's to get the two parties to a point where they think that it's a deal they can live with. And probably some of the best mediations are one where both sides are not necessarily happy with what they got, but they're happy that they got there.
Okay.
And you know, that's my goal in that type of a situation, is to just get them to an agreement and a resolution so that they can not get into the courtroom.
Okay. And that's the ultimate goal, is to
Yes.
do something not in court. So now let's talk about timeline. Last week, there were two big announcements that maybe people caught on or maybe didn't. The Redbird Capital with the Big 12, not necessarily hidden, but the fact that that was sort of in the open now was an event. I'm not putting any value on it, but it was an event. Another event that happened last week that maybe is more practical and comes with this settlement, maybe, and that's what I'm asking you, is the Florida State Supreme Court basically said to the ACC, no more. And I know you can't talk about details, but as events go, that was a pretty big one, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know. I think what it certainly told the ACC was that if they wanted to go forward, they were going to have to fight this on two fronts, and that was in North Carolina and in the state of Florida, and obviously for it's a home game for the ACC. I mean, for FSU. And I had no conversations with anybody about that. That was just another one of the pleadings that played out over the last 6 months, of which there have been many. But once the Supreme Court rules, that's kind of the end of it. It's certainly within the state of Florida.
Right, and that's what they were fighting over. There's jurisdiction, right?
Correct.
The ACC wanted North Carolina, Clemson wanted South Carolina, Florida State wanted Florida, right?
But that's true. But just the fact that Florida State, the Florida Supreme Court ruled in favor of FSU, doesn't mean that relieved Florida State from the obligation to fight the case in North Carolina. So what you could have had is literally cases running concurrently in both jurisdictions. And if that had ever got to that point, in South Carolina as well, with Clemson. So you would have had one in South Carolina, two in North Carolina, and one in Florida concurrently, if they had gotten to that point. Right. But once the resolution was reached, it's still going to take them some time to dismiss everything, I would assume, and finalize all the documents. But it should put to bed all of the litigation in all three states.